The other thing he did, which was completely fearless, is if you look at him on the ESPYs, you've seen that footage of him on the ESPYs, and people were so angry at the time because he's going after these athletes, and there was this sense of like, you can't do this, and he took so much shit for that. And then you look at it now, that's what the ESPYs has become. The ESPYs now is like a lot of people doing jokes about
a roast.
Yeah. But it became more that way. He just did that first. And at the time, people were really upset. And at the time, you feel like there's a lot of, in comedy, people getting applause for being brave in one way or another. But oftentimes what they're doing, they know is going to play well. Do you know what I mean? But when he's doing it, he was doing things that really were brave, and he paid the price for it. Yeah. He took a lot of heat when he went out. He took a lot of, it cost him his job at Saturday Night Live. Yeah. And
he was, one of his bosses was friends with a murderer. And so Norm was going to do
alleged.
Okay, Norm was.
This is a show that follows the rule of law.
All right, alleged. You can just slug in alleged. We can edit that.
I see no proof, Andy.
Yeah, but he was so. And the word I'm assuming that it came down. Hey, lay off the OJ stuff, because Norm would do at the time like 5 OJ jokes in a row, and to Norm's sensibility, somebody saying, hey, the big boss wants you to stop making jokes about that murderer. Yeah. Norm is like, no. Yeah. Like, if anything that you should not back off of, it's making jokes about a murderer.
You know what? That must have been tough for you at that time.
Well, I remember, and I have it somewhere. Either I have it or Jeff Ross has it. But we got the word came down. You can't book Norm Macdonald anymore. And it came from the top and from Don Ohlmeyer. And, Don Ohlmeyer was the one that, Lorne suggested me for Late Night. He gave me the job. And so I had a lot of, feelings of loyalty to Don Ohlmeyer because I wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for Don sticking with me. So I owe him that. So I wrote a letter to Don that said, I got this directive. You've hired me to do the best show I can do, and this is my best guest. And so I need to do what I need to do my job, which is the best show I can do. And I got the letter back, and written in the margins was just something, I don't remember the exact, but it was something like I expected better from you, or something like that. It was basically me being told,
do as you're told.
Yeah, but or I'm really disappointed in your lack of loyalty or something. And I felt at the time that's not a lack of loyalty. That is loyalty. I've got to So it was I always greedily wanted more Norm. And, I was upset, this is in a purely selfish way, but the number one fan request, I think this podcast now is only 3 years old, the number one request for a guest, by far, ahead of everyone, Norm Macdonald. Yeah. And we tried for a long time to get Norm to come on the podcast, and couldn't get him to come on. And I, started to get into my head about it and think, well, is something wrong? Is he upset with us? And it's only now that I'm realizing that he was ill.
It was hard to book him on the show,
It became...
Paula Davis has said that, we try constantly, and he just wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, we were all scratching our heads. Like, where's Norm?
We were all wondering where he is. And I know that fans were thinking, well, where is he? And we were as confused as anybody. And of course now, sadly, we know how much difficulty he was having. And how long and how very sick, how long he's been sick and how very sick he was. But Yeah, I go back to, again, like I'm like a dog with a bone, trying to figure out. He's very, I'm just going to tell Frank is new to this, so he keeps shuffling papers right up against a microphone. There you go. That's okay, Frank.
He wants it to make
Frank,
sure
you can
people
have it
know.
right here on the table.
Yeah, sure.
And then,
He wants some people to know we're reading from a script.
Yeah, he's got all these notes. Norm equals funny. Like that's not gonna help you. I remember, I gave this shout out to Jim Downey earlier. Jim Downey and Norm were such a good team because they both have a very high bar for comedy and a really good ear. And I think Norm was the perfect vehicle for Jim's humor and vice versa. They just had a really copacetic relationship. But one of my favorite Norm jokes of all time was an OJ joke. And the picture comes up, and it's that picture of Johnny Cochran at the trial, and OJ is seated next to him, and Johnny Cochran's holding up the knit cap that was found at the scene. And forgive my bad Norm impression, but it was kind of like something along the lines of, rough, difficult time today in the O.J. Simpson trial. Johnny Cochran introduced the knit hat that was found at the scene of the murders, and he held it aloft and showed the jury the hat that had been found. Things got off the rails a little bit when O.J. Simpson interrupted him and said, "Hey, careful with that. That's my lucky stabbing cap." And I remember that joke came through the TV and slapped me in the face. It was so good.
Yeah.
And I love the whole, and of course, Norm, what he would do is, and I never saw him do, he would tell the joke and then he would stare you down through the television.
Yeah.
Like, try that on for size.
Yeah. Something no one else could get away with.
Yeah. And
you would look like such an asshole if anybody else did
that. But, hey, that's my lucky stabbing cap.
Yeah.
And then you can just see his eyes on fire and that grin, and he's going to hold it there, and he knows he's going to lose his job.
Yeah.
He's going to lose his job over this. Funniest guy to ever be on that show, and he's going to lose his job.